Hi, my name is Ko Kim. I'm on the Google Play Business Development team covering games for global and Korea.
Hi, my name is Yoshi. I'm also working for the Google Play BD teams. I'm on the Japan.
We wanted to take some time to share some pro tips on how you, as a game developer or an app developer, can take your app or game to Korea, Japan, or really any other country. So let's start about how big this opportunity is in Asia, specifically in Korea and Japan.
Ooh.
So in the subways, you can see that everyone is glued to their smartphones. And what are they doing on those phones? They're playing games. And it's not just the subway. It's while they're walking down the street, heading to school, heading to restaurants, meeting up with friends. I mean, they are gaming everywhere. And what kind of phones do you think that all these people are playing their games on?
Ooh, Android.
Android. Especially true in Korea, where everywhere is an Android phone, and then even in Japan and a lot of parts of Asia as well. And so how do you take advantage to take advantage of this opportunity? Is that you really got to pick the right game to export. So what game in your portfolio is really going to engage the players that are in these communities? Well, let's take a look at some of the most popular games that are in Korea and Japan right now. So in Korea, we have games such as Dragonflight, Anipong, Fish Island, Isamaru, defense games such as Cat War, and a lot of these things is that you can definitely tell that there's a different art style and a different way that players actually would want to look at these games and actually feel like games. And what is it like in Japan?
And in Japan also there are the cardboard games plus something like puzzle functions or like quiz effect.
So what's an example of a good localized game? So let's take a look at Glue's Eternity Warriors 2. This is a very good example of what you can do to fully localize your game for that market. And so this is just kind of like a screenshot of the banner graphic that you can see for both Eternity Warriors 2 in Korea and Japan. And notice that they've definitely taken and been very, very detailed on the font that they use, also the way that they localize to that audience. So we think this is a very good example of what a good localized game can be in Korea and Japan. Which also means that localization does not equal translation. Actually, can we repeat this again? Localization does not equal to translation.
Yes.
So this will carry out throughout all our presentation. If there's one thing you should remember, it's this.
This is a big point.
So first impressions do count. Let's take a look at this game, Anomaly Korea by 11-Bit Studios. Actually, this game, Anomaly Korea, is localized in Korean. There is actually Korean translations within the game. What's actually very unfortunate is within the Google Play listing in Korea, there's actually no Korean screenshots or banner graphics or anything that's translated, which is actually very unfortunate for the Korean player who actually looked at this game and was like, oh, look, this game looks really cool, really awesome graphics, but they have no idea that it's in Korean because everything in the description is in English. I mean, and this same could be probably true for you guys in Japan too, right?
Yeah, it's pretty, everyone's hard to read it in English. Once they are translated to the Japanese, they can understand what's the game's on.
Right. So that's why you should localize your listings to your fans in Korean and Japanese, especially if the game is available in those languages. If you look at Gun Bros 2, what's great is that they actually created specific graphics, but for not only obviously for the English game, but for Korean and Japanese. And I actually think the Korean version of this graphic is pretty cool looking. And I think the Japanese one looks pretty cool as well.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And also, it's a pretty different, the Korean versions and Japanese versions. And then feature graphic, it's a Korean version using the Koreans, the Koreans, and also the Japanese version using the original titles, plus Japanese.
And it's not just about what's in the Google Play Store listing. It's all about what you do within your game as well. So you really got to think like your local gamer in the sense of that you have to figure out how your gamer within Korea and Japan is actually going to play your game. So we have two examples that are actually very good examples. Again, we have Beeline Smurf Village in Japanese actually, and then we also have Madfinger's Shadowgun Dead Zone that's actually in Korean, but also localized in many other different languages. What's really great is that they actually thought about how the text is going to fit within the context of their game. So in the case of Smurf Village, it's actually pretty simple. You know, it's a social network game, so they really did focus on allowing the user to be able to manipulate their village and kind of make the game changes as necessary. Whereas in Shadowgun, you know, it's all about like upgrading your equipment, upgrading your weaponry, and like, you know, choosing weapons. So they actually made really sure that the localization was for all of that, all that text was spot on and exactly what a gamer in that region would feel.
That text is not like a machine language, right? Like machine translation language.
Yeah, as far as some of my Korean friends say, this was like they didn't even know it was developed by a European developer. So that's a good sign.
Let's talk about the font and layout in the Asian language. You can see their Asian language is pretty different from the English within the game, and then so you can see that layout is pretty using the pretty weird font, and also the layout is pretty broken in the Asian language.
So the one thing you do have to keep in mind is that, you know, Asian languages do present a little bit differently from what English or some of the European languages can put into a game. So sometimes you really got to watch whether your menu button is actually big enough to fit that Asian language. So this is definitely you should take into mind, and definitely something you tell your QA teams to check on. Now let's talk about speaking the language. And so what we mean by speak the lingo is that, you know, there's some things that a Korean and Japanese game player is used to when they encounter things such as price, for example.
This is pretty important for the users.
Yeah. So you really got to make sure your prices at whatever you set for your in-app purchases or your or your prices are actually the right price for that region. So what do I mean by this? So, you know, typically in the US, you see a lot of things that are 99 cents, or in euros, 79 euro cents. But in Korea and Japan, there is no such thing as prices that ends in nines. They actually end in zeros. And so in the Korean, which is in red, that's 1,001. In Japanese, it's 100 yen. So what we see most often, that's actually a pretty common mistake, is that we see really weird currency converted numbers. So if you put in 99 cents in the US, you're actually going to see 1,058 won, which is actually a very weird number.
Yes.
And the next important thing is to provide customer support in that local language. So what's often very frustrating for any user is that they cannot understand the customer service representative can't understand the language that the user is complaining in.
Yep.
So this is an example from like Japan, where actually the replied review is in Japanese, and so don't reply to review in English. You don't want to make your users pissed off. And finally, what we want to end on is to know your player's gameplay behavior. What do I mean by this is that oftentimes I like to say that an Asian female casual game player is a lot more hardcore than an 18-year-old American boy that's playing first-person shooters. And what do we mean by this? It actually just means that Asian players really go through content like no other. You really got to think about updates. You got to think about new content. You got to think about events. Yoshi, what did Puzzle and Dragon do in terms of like a lot of their content updates?
They do in the every day is their updated event.
So,
It's
you know,
pretty
we're in the land of super competitive and everyone wants to really eat your content. But that's a good sign. It just means you're just going to have to keep up. So thanks for listening to our presentation today. If you have any other questions, just let us know. Thanks.
ありがとう。